welcome back to Nude Hippo, your Chicago show. As you know, I'm Bridget Houlihan, one of your co-hosts, sans Tony right now, because we are going to have a little roundtable discussion on a recent FCC resolution. And I'd like to introduce the cast of characters that I'm with. To my left is 50th Ward Alderman Bernard Stone, and he recently has sponsored the resolution, which we are going to talk about today. Next to his left is Steve Jajkowski, our video veteran, who is also of ChicagoTelevision.com. To his left is John Kuczaj of ChicagoMediaExaminer.com. And finally, to his left is our infamous Drew Walker of DJHeadlines.com. And all three, of course, are our media watchdogs that we have with us here on Nude Hippo today. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. And we're going to talk about this resolution that the FCC, basically, it's an FCC resolution to preserve its ban on cross-ownership of print and electronic media. Alderman Stone, could you explain this in the most basic terms for people like myself who don't really understand what it is that's going on?
Well, the FCC has, for at least 30 years, been banning the cross-ownership of radio stations and print media, and so that they could stop large conglomerates of owning and controlling our networks, and slowly but surely have been deregulating the field. And what's happening, of course, is that the media is ending up in the hands of a few owners.
Now, you guys are over here nodding. Why you got? And I see the little smiles on your faces.
The South Dakota story was very, very big because it's one small town, and all of the radio stations, as the alderman said, are owned by Clear Channel, which is the largest owner-operator of radio stations in the country. They have over 1,200 stations, and they directly benefited from the 1996 Deregulation Act, which really affected radio, that said you can now own up to 8 stations in one market. And so when they had this train accident, Clear Channel, in their defense, said, oh, well, we did have one employee there, but you weren't able to contact him. But probably in reality, all the stations were voice tracked, and with computers there really wasn't anyone there. So they couldn't tell anyone over the airwaves or anything like that.
Okay, John?
Right. Well, I mean, the alderman's correct, and Drew, in bringing up that extreme example. And again, that is, in a way, that's an extreme example. We're talking about a small town. Radio in that town was the #1 source of local media. That's not the example in a vast majority of areas. And most likely, really, the problem there is that the FCC wasn't keeping up on the local commitment to the radio stations. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, they shouldn't be voice tracking five radio stations at once.
They can do what they like.
Well,
yeah, that's the problem.
There's no law about voice tracking.
Really?
But you said the 5 stations owned by the one company was beneficial to who? To the company or to the
Oh, I didn't say it was beneficial. But from the company's perspective, it's very beneficial, because now you have one newsroom for 5 stations rather than one newsroom for only one station of theirs. And so now you can have one on-air personality be 3 different people on 3 stations rather than one personality for one station. So from a cost perspective, it's very beneficial for the companies, which is what the companies are arguing, and that's why they're backing the FCC to ease up the regulations. But I think it's a much bigger, coming up, the FCC decision this time is a much bigger decision for television rather than radio.
And in a lot of cases, what happens is that you've got a situation where there's already 3, 4, 5, 6 dominant television stations in a market, let's say, and you've got 3 or 4 stations that they're just the weaker stations. In Chicago, for instance, we've got 5 national conglomerates, 5 national corporations that have the top 5 stations in the market, actually top 6. Fox has 2 stations in the market. And you've got some other independent stations that have a hard time right now running their business, making money against the big guys. Why? Because the big guys can spend more money on programming. They can spend more money investing into their station. An example, Channel 50 which was purchased by Fox just last year. So Fox runs Channel 32 and Channel 50. Well, Channel 50 was never going to get into the news business. They were never going to do that public service, and because getting into the news business is just way expensive.
Right,
and
right.
as for them, profit-wise, they were having a hard enough time getting the profits from the regular programming. Now that Channel 32 has bought them, well, have they really taken another voice out of the mix, or have they added extra profit to their operation? So maybe now they can start a 5 o'clock newscast or a 6 o'clock newscast in the afternoons, whereas before it would have been difficult for them to do that.
Right. Hold that thought. Hold all these thoughts. We are going to take a quick break, but stay with us. We're going to keep talking about this FCC resolution, so continue to watch Nude Hippo, your Chicago show. Hey everybody, welcome back to Nude Hippo, your Chicago show. As you all know, we've been sitting here having a roundtable discussion about a recent FCC resolution about public and private airwaves and ownership and this and that. And as we were cutting away to commercial, we were talking to John about Fox and the big companies and money and stuff like that. I wanted to get everybody's opinion on what John was saying. If you could recap that one last line that you were talking about.
Basically that the consolidation, the opportunity to purchase, a couple more, maybe another TV station,
right.
Maybe even a newspaper company owning a TV station, or a TV station owning a newspaper, or extra radio stations. Sometimes, especially in larger markets, will help because you're taking maybe a weaker station and adding it to a stronger station, and really giving that owner a little more revenue to bring forth a little more of the public service, in this case, news.
Alderman Stone, your thoughts on that?
Well, I happen to agree, and I'm not saying that deregulation is always bad. My fear on deregulation is not in the major markets. My fear is in the smaller markets, and my fear is also with respect to thought control and the movement to the right, which is occurring right now over the media.
Right. Now, I want to know, who are the big players in Chicago? Who would this affect? Because I'm thinking, of course, Tribune owns WGN, owns Wrigley, all these things.
Right.
Who are the big players that this really affects?
In Chicago, the major players would be Clear Channel Communications, CBS Infinity. Bonneville is, I don't believe they're as large as the other two, but they got a fairly large position here. But what I was thinking when listening to all this was, I can see how economics play into this, and given the times and things are expensive, but we're forgetting one major thing. The airways were for the public, and that's what they were created for. And everybody should have an opportunity to broadcast. And that opportunity is disappearing by the major corporations taking over, kicking out the mom and pop operations. And as the alderman said, it's going to be really affected by the smaller communities in the rural areas, where they're only going to have one or two stations owned by the same company that's going to have their opinions, and nobody else is going to be able to voice what they have.
Don't you guys think this has kind of already happened in a way? I mean,
it has.
Yeah.
It has to a certain extent, sure. With this new position the FCC is taking on deregulating everything else, well, what happens to the FCC? Did we just abolish it? I mean, what good are they then?
Right.
Why are they here?
Well, there's always been a question on what good they are, because they are, as it is, an appointed panel, and it's the whim of those that appoint the panel.
Okay, see, I didn't even know that they're appointed panel. Who are these people? Who are they? How are they appointed?
Currently, you have 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat, and that's the reason for the move towards deregulation.
Right. Yeah, pretty much the president will make the appointments, and Congress will accept or decline the appointments, and you get a Republican president and a Republican Congress, and it just kind of slides in. And I believe the FCC commissioners themselves have either a 2 or 4 year term that may or may not get renewed. So yeah, these aren't elected officials that are making these big decisions for us.
Right.
when it comes to the public interest, one thing that I had thought about, especially with this resolution, was here in Chicago, we've got the Tribune Company owns newspaper, they own the Channel 9, they own CLTV.
Yeah.
They've got a cable channel, they've got a radio station. But going to the newspaper here, the Tribune is definitely, when it comes to circulation, is number one daily newspaper. They're also, make no bones about it, they're number one when they bring in the advertising. The Sun-Times, I mean, they constantly will write about how, you know, it's just so hard to go up against the Tribune.
Right.
And I'm thinking now, if the FCC okays, says it's fine for a TV station and a newspaper for you to own both, I'm thinking this is the great opportunity for Rupert Murdoch, who also owns newspapers,
Right, to come back
in, buy the Sun-Times, and then you've really got competition.
I don't think the Sun-Times will be for sale, but the real problem, we were lucky because the Tribune has been a pretty responsible multiple owner. And the thing with the Tribune you've got to understand is that they were grandfathered in. They preceded the original regulation. So they're really not under control of the regulation we're talking about. But there's nothing that would stop the Sun-Times from entering into the media market. Remember, the Sun-Times is owned by Canadians who have papers all over the world. They have newspapers in Israel, in Canada, in England. So there's no reason they couldn't enter into the radio and TV.
Right.
And so there's nothing to stop them if a media war starts from entering into the market. I don't think they'll be for sale because they're a major player in the market already. But we mentioned before Infinity and Clear Channel, they're major players all over this country.
Right. Hold all these thoughts. We're going to cut to commercial break really, really fast. So stay with us at Nude Hippo, Your Chicago Show, and we'll come back and we'll get final thoughts on this FCC resolution matter. Hey everybody, welcome back to Nude Hippo, Your Chicago Show, as we are finishing up our roundtable discussion on a recent FCC resolution about who should own the public airways. Should it be big companies? Should it not be? Who should regulate? Who shouldn't? Big money? Tribune. These are the things that we've been talking about for the last few minutes here. I basically want to get people's final thoughts, for or against. Is this something that is a good idea? Is it not? I know the resolution was just passed, I believe 15-0 last.
5-0.
Oh, I'm sorry, 5-0.
Which means every
good thing we got the alderman here,
which
guys.
means every member of the city council apparently agreed. Of course, I made the only presentation on the floor, and but everybody apparently agreed with me. And I'll make the first statement. That is, I think that we should oppose deregulation, and I've already stated why. Even though I don't think Chicago would be greatly affected. But I think the statement that was made here tonight is the real answer, and that is the airwaves belong to the people. Right now, the only thing that really belongs to the people is access television.
It may come down to that.
Yeah.
I'm totally against any changes. I think any changes that would happen would be just. It wouldn't be beneficial to the public.
Great.
You know, as I stated before, the airways belong to the public, and I think large corporations that have made us forget that, or hopefully that we'll forget about it because of the bottom line and economics. And like I said, I can understand that, but there's certain fundamental law and rules and how we broadcast and how we operate on the air.
Right.
That if we take all this away, then all we have is, one or two companies that'll dictate what we hear, what we see, and
Right.
if we don't like it, well, too bad.
Right.
Yeah.
You guys, John and Drew, agree, disagree? Quick, we got 15 seconds.
I'm all for a little bit of deregulation, not going too far.
Okay.
We've got a lot of media voices out there now between cable and the internet. We could do a little deregulation.
Great. Drew?
Disagree. I don't think it should go we should go through. We're deregulated enough for now.
Great, great. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this week. Again, it's Alderman Stone, Steve Jajkowski, John Kuczaj, Drew Walker, and of course, Bridget Houlihan here with Nude Hippo, your Chicago show. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
This has been a presentation of Opie Productions.
Tony, can you shut up?
You've got something to say to us? Then do it, and do it now. We may read your response on a future broadcast. Just email us at feedback@nudehippo.com or just visit us on the web at www.nudehippo.com.